You're watching Lore of the Internet, and this is 19 Crazy Encounters with Rich Kids. I lived with 5 guys and I was the only one whose parents weren't millionaires, not close at all. They never cleaned. About once a month I would deep clean the house, but 2 days later there was garbage and food on the floor. I found out that they all told their parents the poor kid made these messes when one of their moms came by to scream at me. A guy I met in my early 20s was the richest person I've ever known. His dad was CFO for a big bank, but died when my friend was 14. He grew up in a massive mansion, had his rent paid for in a luxury rental building, and had unlimited funds for drugs. Eventually, his mom forced him to go to rehab, which he did for a couple of months. One day, while he was at rehab, my roommate got a call from him. He said he's outside and didn't know where else to go. He had been cut off from his money and knew that we had an extra room and asked if he could stay with us for a while he learned basic life skills, getting a job, buying groceries, cleaning, budgeting, etc. We let him in against our better judgment. About a month in, he had managed to stay sober, keep a job, and not be such a parasitic piece of shit. His mom thought he was doing better too, so she reconnected him to his money. His whole attitude and demeanor completely changed. All of a sudden it's, I don't have to stay in this shitty apartment living like I'm poor. I don't have to stop doing drugs. I've got my money back. He left right before rent was due and basically told us to fuck ourselves. 2 months later, he had the same exact situation happen. His mom cut him off again, forced him to go to rehab, he left again and called us. But this time we figured he'd rather not live in our shitty apartment, living like he's poor. My college roommate's mom gave him fucking $1,400 for the weekend just randomly. He blew through the whole thing by Saturday, asked his mom for more money and was screaming at her because she promised $1,400 for the weekend, and he spent most of what she gave to him on Friday, which wasn't part of the weekend. Knew a trust fund girl whose dad gave her the money to start a company. She lost it when she went on vacation for 6 months and forgot she was supposed to pay her employees all the time. She assumed they would not get paid for 6 months and be there when she got back. I quizzed her on this for a few minutes and it was clear she had no idea what a job was. The girl I went to high school with got a Mercedes for her 16th birthday. Bitched and moaned about the fact she didn't get a Lexus because her name was Lexi and she thought it would be so cool for Lexi to drive a Lexus with the custom license plate saying Lexi. Her parents did cave and buy her a Lexus for her 17th birthday. My college roommate threw a massive tantrum, like on the floor screaming and crying because her parents got her a used big ass truck for graduation. It was a 2013 with less than 10,000 miles that was fully upgraded, loaded with every possible add-on. We graduated in 2014. The car was maybe a year old and she already had a 2009 Range Rover. This happened a couple weeks ago at the Infiniti dealership. I was in the waiting room with a very well-dressed lady for our loaner cars. She left the waiting room to look at her loaner car and came back crying. She said she drives a fully loaded QX80 and they gave her a QX60 with nothing in it. And I said I'm sorry that happened and asked how long she was going to have the loaner car for, and she said a couple of hours. I wanted to tell her to suck it up, but instead I sat there quiet thinking how life must be easy for her to cry over a loaner car. A Saudi guy in the UK got in a crash. With light damage to one side of a brand new Mercedes, he called for one of his assistants to come get him, even though the car was fully drivable. My friend rolled up on call with his tow truck and asked the guy where he wanted the Merc towed. The guy gave him the keys and said, "Keep it. I don't want it." It must be nice. The girl got a 2-year-old Range Rover for her 17th birthday, now 20 and still doesn't have her license. Sits unused in their 4-car garage. A girl in my school was surprised by her parents in the school parking lot with a new BMW. A freaking BMW. Everyone who is out basically watching us go down and she starts crying. At first we're all thinking it's because she's so happy, and then she runs back into the school. Apparently they were supposed to show up earlier, I'm assuming when there would be more students to witness the surprise. I felt bad for the dad because he looked totally embarrassed and sad about it. You know, in his head he's like, I created this monster. My personal favorite was in college. kid down the hall from me bought a brand new Fender Stratocaster and played with it for a day and got bored and sold it to me, case and all, for $20. I still have it and play it 15 years later. It's a great guitar. I had a scholarship to a private school for my secondary education, 11 to 18. We were by no means poor, but compared to the people who were paying full fees, I was a peasant. The vast majority of the students were wealthy, and about half of them were spoiled little brats. Most of the kids got given cars for their 17th birthday in anticipation of passing their driving test. One boy in particular in my year had a September birthday, so was one of the first kids to take his test, and he had a huge house garden. So, he already knew how to drive. You can drive on private land at any age. On the day he passed his test, he got dropped off back at school in his shiny new sports car. I don't know what type it was, I don't give a fuck about cars, but everyone else seemed impressed. He picked up a couple of friends to go for a spin, and before they got 100 meters up the road, he completely wrecked the fucking car. His dad bought him a new one on the next day, and he complained it was the wrong color. My brother and I grew up working class, but when my mom remarried, we were all of a sudden in the 1%. One day we were in high school, my brother's girlfriend came over to our place in tears. It turns out the family's Mercedes was in the shop, and she had to use the Audi. I think that's a warning sign that they need to break up. There was this rich kid in our class who was literally disgusted by us, buying used stuff like computer parts on eBay. Once during conversation, I said I bought an eBay memory module for my PC and said to me that I should have a little dignity, and if I buy used stuff, I should at least keep it to myself. A girl at work told me she hated her dad. I asked why. She said he keeps asking for money since she used his credit card for a Euro trip and left him an 80 grand bill from last year. Yeah, I'd be asking for money too. A 14-year-old in full volume cursing meltdown. Where the fuck is he? Because the pilot of the private helicopter that had brought them there had gone off to get a cup of coffee. The kid was done skiing for the day and found it totally unacceptable that he had to wait 10 minutes before he got flown home. In college, there was this girl that was sort of in our friend group that came from a very wealthy family. In discussing plans for the summer, there were some people planning a trip together, and she overheard someone say they wished they could go, but they couldn't afford it. Her response was, "I don't understand, why don't you just have your parents pay for it?" She'd always had her parents pay for everything, and she genuinely thought it was the same for everyone. Girl in college kept putting her clothes on the floor and then would knock on the RA's door and tell her the clothes were piling up. Our RA was a foreign exchange student, but a sweetheart, and she was actually washing the clothes to be nice for like 2 months. The floor told the RA to stop and scolded the girl to do her own laundry. She was absolutely insulted that she had to do laundry to the point where she ended up re-wearing clothes or throwing them out and just buying new ones. I dated this girl and she loved KFC. She ended up getting her dad to buy the franchise off of the one across the road and relocate it to the same side of the road as her apartment so she didn't have to cross the road. Who the fuck are these people? Went to a private university with a girl whose father was an executive for Tommy Hilfiger. She got homesick while at school, and instead of getting a care package with cookies and other little things from home, she got a Porsche Carrera GT. God damn, that isn't expensive. How much does that cost? $448,000. What the fuck? If anyone has any similar stories, feel free to share them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this content, feel free to like or subscribe. Until then, we'll see you in the next video.